I'm Jack,
And I'm Brenden,
and we're coming to you from beyond the terrarium.
where DIY meets naturalistic reptile keeping.
Enjoy. All right. Welcome back to episode number 10 of Beyond the Terrarium. We are actually at double digits now, which is crazy to think about. Just thinking about where we came from, and all of a sudden we're at 10 episodes.
Is this really number 10?
This is 10, man.
Holy shit. I thought it was like 9. I can't believe we're double digits, man.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. We're at 10 episodes. So
they say...
What do they say?
This is going to be completely... I know we have intro still. I'm going to do the intro and then I'll...
You're good. That's it. That's the intro.
Okay, so I've been listening to this... Have you listened to Modern Wisdom podcast?
I've never listened to it.
Okay, it's a very good podcast. Sure. But he was talking about podcasts on like this recent episode I was watching. And he said 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 10 or 12. And then out of those, 90% don't make it past 25.
Wow.
Which is crazy. It's a crazy statistic, but
so we're almost there. We're in the top 10% almost.
Yeah, so if we make it past 25, we're in the top 1% of like podcasts, which is crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I still think we're the number one podcast.
I agree. Yeah. Unbiased, of course.
Top 90. We're in 99th percentile.
Yeah, Joe Rogan, who, you know?
Spotify contract.
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, so this is episode 10. We've got, I think, a couple of good topics to talk through today. This is going to be the first episode of our Naturalistic series, our Bioactive series. And I think we're going to touch on, a lot of the core tenets of bioactive keeping in this episode. So I'm super stoked on that. But as always, you have to start off with the cat gecko eggs, Brenden. Every time.
They haven't done nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
Nothing. No good news. No. Well, I guess they're alive still, I think. So that's good news. But they haven't hatched yet.
Okay. And we're like 4 weeks out, you think?
We just hit 60 days on the 22nd. So 2 days ago. So we just hit 60 days.
And what do they normally go for?
Your guess is as good as mine, brother. I have no idea. I've heard 60 days. I've heard 90. I've heard 120.
Okay. So we're in the hatching zone now.
I check them every morning and I check them every night, man.
Okay.
And then I got... So the female that laid those eggs looks like she's cooking some more. Which is a great thing. If she lays another clutch, then I think I'm confident that I can get eggs at that point. And then it's just hatching them, obviously.
Yeah.
I put a third pair. So I have her who's laying. She's by herself, no male anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I have another pair together that's been together for about a month. And then I just put a third pair together like 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So I'm hoping to have 3 females laying by like the next few months, hopefully.
Nice. You better be rolling in the cat geckos.
Yeah, if I could get even a clutch out of each one this year, I'd be ecstatic.
Yeah.
I'd be so stoked.
I mean, even just these eggs hatching will be.
Dude, I'm gonna cry. Obviously.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be in the group chat just like with my phone, just like, oh my god, look at them. You know?
That's gonna be awesome, dude. That's gonna be awesome. You were talking very recently about introducing a new species into the cat gecko enclosures. Which I want to
not into the current ones, but I want to do. Here's my vision, right?
Okay.
It's always a big vision with me, but Chrissy makes fun of me all the time because I come to her. I'm like, yo, you know what I'm going to do? And it's like, well, what's next? How much money are we spending? What's the next thing you're adding to the room kind of thing?
Yeah.
But I'd like to do a cylinder enclosure, like a 360 view enclosure right in the middle of the gecko room.
Yeah.
That's like, 6 feet tall or so, 7 feet tall, which the ceilings are 7 foot. So I guess 6 foot tall.
Mm-hmm.
With like a central tree stump or like a tree. And then do like like a paludarium type setup with like half water, half land on the bottom. And I wasn't prepared for this. Let me find the actual name of these things.
Sorry.
Oh shit. So I'm terrible at scientific names. So they're called the Borneo-eared tree frog or something like that. Hold on, I gotta get it. Let me get it.
Say the scientific name.
Borneo-eared frog. No, I don't want to. Palapodades, Atelophus, Borneo-eared frog.
Okay.
So like in researching those, their humidity, temperature, enclosure size, everything matches up perfectly with cat geckos because they're from the same areas. They're actually found in the same national park as cat geckos are, which is kind of cool. And they stay pretty small and they look like wood grain. They're fucking insane looking.
Yeah, I'm sharing a picture here.
I'm thinking of doing a multi-species cat gecko frog paludarium eventually.
It's gonna be badass, man.
I think so. Look how cool they look, dude. They look like wood.
Yeah.
It's actually crazy.
Polypodades odopholis or odolophus.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, these things are sick. I just wanted on the record on the podcast too.
Oh, God, I knew this was coming.
Frogs are sick. I love frogs. And Brendan's been like, your frogs suck. I hate your frogs. The frogs are the worst thing I've ever seen. He's been saying all these mean things about frogs, and here we are. Brendan wants frogs.
I just like talking shit to you. It's okay. So here's the thing. You've been talking frogs forever. So I've been like kind of looking at them every now and then, like, oh yeah, I guess I could maybe see, possibly down the road. Christy, my girlfriend, is like randomly out of nowhere into frogs like crazy. Like we went to a local show a few weeks ago and we were walking and I was talking to her and I turned around and she stopped like 4 tables back, just like oogling over dart frogs. And I was like, oh God, here we go. She's going to get me into frogs. And then Billy Hunt is like the frog man now. He's like gone crazy on frogs the past few months and he keeps sending me stuff. So it's like,
frog overload.
Yeah, like I've been talking about wanting to do a multi-species cat gecko enclosure, but I didn't know what species I wanted to add. And I feel like a frog would probably be the best bet.
I think
in terms of like not predating on the cat geckos and stuff like that,
100%. I think so.
Yeah. But speaking of awesome frogs, I'm so jealous, man. So we're going to talk Herp Trip, obviously, that you just went on with all the boys, without me, of course, because I was stuck here broke and sad.
Yes. Yeah. I apologize for that and all the jealousy that you're going to get through this conversation here in a second.
Okay. I'm a grown man. I can take it. It's fine.
I forgot that I was still sharing my screen when I started going through this. So I didn't mean to be doing that, but
I don't think there's anything too crazy on there.
But I did attend a herping trip hosted by our good buddy Chaz Ewing, more than Morelia, down in Francis Marion National Forest, which is kind of like it's massive. It's a huge national forest. It's in between Charleston and Myrtle Beach, down in South Carolina. It's this awesome mix of longleaf pine habitat and cypress swamp and open rivers, and it's awesome. It is like the epitome of like the low country South Carolina, and I think there's something like 30 species of snake there. So it's a tremendous biodiversity hotspot that we have just here in the state, and it's one of my favorite places. I used to spend a lot of time out there when I was in grad school, because I went to College Charleston for grad school, so it was like 30 minutes away. So I used to go road cruise out there all the time and just really fell in love with the habitat out there. So was stoked that we were going back. So I picked up Zach Holland from Queen City Constrictors and Devin. I don't know Devin's last name, unfortunately, but Devin99 on Instagram.
Yeah.
Picked them up from the Myrtle Beach airport on Thursday night. We hit a couple road cruising spots, didn't see very much, and then got down to the campsite, set up camp. So we were there Thursday night, and then we did a little bit of a frog walk and saw a bunch of these frogs that I'm showing now. These are ones we found on another night, but same frogs basically that we found. So some barking tree frogs. This is a young green frog or bronze frog, I believe. There's a super nice spadefoot toad, which I'm in love with, and I definitely want to do a naturalistic setup with them. The barking tree frogs as well. This was a pig frog. So this is a small one. They get massive. They get bullfrog sized, and we actually caught a bullfrog sized one when Zach and Devin and I were out on our frog walk. That was just super cool to see, just this massive honking frog that was super colorful. You can see on this young one how much pattern it has. So we were able to see that, which was awesome. But yeah, man, that leopard frogs, copperheads, there's this guy with the black swamp snake, yellow rat snake. So just a ton of fun. We caught 17 or 16 species of snake, which is insane. Yeah, insane. We caught almost 100 snakes on the trip. But yeah, out of 16 species. So, cottonmouths, copperheads, those were the only venomous, actually. We were looking for pygmies the whole weekend, pygmies and canes, and we did not find either, which is surprising to me just because of the numbers of them there. But yeah, so didn't see those, but we saw yellow rat snakes, corn snakes. Corn snakes were far and away my big target. I think I was talking about this on the last time we recorded, how I just really wanted to see a corn snake. And being able to finally see one in the wild, not just one. We caught 4 total corn snakes.
Yep.
So the first one was a road cruised corn that we got the first night of road cruising and just inching its way onto the highway. Really busy road, so I was glad we were able to get it off the road and onto the other side. So that one was super pretty, young juvenile. And then Justin Smith from THP and Snakes and Stogies, him and Chaz went out to go get monsters, I think, from the grocery store. And if you know Justin.
No, we all know Justin drinks Reigns, right?
Apparently he's on his monster kick now, man.
I'm surprised his heart hasn't given out with the amount of energy drinks that man drinks.
Yeah, so they that was maybe 9 o'clock in the morning. They road cruised another corn, crossing the same road.
Nice.
About, like just under a quarter mile from where the other one was, so very close. So we got those 2, and then Devin flipped some behind a gas station, which was really funny. He just flipped a piece of plywood, and there were 2 big adult corn snakes back there.
That's hilarious.
Which is wild. Yeah. So got those. Got the yellow rats. I love yellow rat snakes. I've got a pair here. Some Beaufort County locality yellows. So it was sick to see them in the wild, and some really nice examples like the one I was just sharing. Like I said, cottonmouths, ton of turtles, man. I was so stoked on the turtles. We got, I want to say 10 mud turtles just crossing the road. Dude, those things are fast as hell. Like that meme where it's like, I'm fast as fuck, boy. Those are those turtles, man. We would have to run to get up to them before they got off the road. They were so fast. Yeah, so we got like 9 or 10 of those. We got Preston and Chaz got a musk turtle. A bunch of eastern box turtles, some really, really pretty ones, some like bright yellow ones. And then a couple yellow belly sliders. So that was turtle wise. And then frog wise, like I said, pig frog, spadefoot toad, southern toad, barking tree frog, pinewood tree frog, green tree frog, bronze frog, leopard frog, pickerel frog. I'm trying to think if there was anything else.
All the frogs,
narrowmouth toads, just tons of them. So there was this road next to our campground that was like in between like a cypress swamp on one side and then like a longleaf pine habitat on the other. And so the frogs were just kind of crossing back and forth between the cypress swamp and then that habitat on the other side, kind of like a snake road type situation, where the road just intersects between 2 habitats. So it was just awesome, man. It was a really good time. It was amazing just hanging out with, all the Herp people over the weekend and getting real quality time. No one had service. So we were just really focused on hanging out and having a good time. And I'm sad to be back. I wish I was still out there. I'm glad that I am showered and I'm sleeping in a comfortable bed and I get to hang out with my girlfriend, but I definitely miss being out in the woods with those guys. So
Yeah.
great time, man. Great
Yeah,
time.
man. It looked like a fucking blast.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Really
amazing.
fun.
It's so funny, man, because it's like these things that you like know about reptiles. It just like every time you go out herping, it just like confirms everything. Like
Yeah.
every day, like midday, just far too hot to see anything.
Mhm.
Like far too hot. And so like midday, we were more focused on like the aquatic habitats, and we found this really cool road that it was just like big canals on either side, basically. And so we got a lot of Nerodia and cottonmouths midday in that area. And so, finding those places midday was good because you were actually able to find stuff, but everything else was kind of bedded down during the day. So it's harder to find stuff, but yeah, it was good. The temperatures were like mid 80s the whole time. So that was great and made road cruising really productive at night. The other things I forgot to mention is that I wasn't with the group when they found it, but I did get to see it as a mud snake. Seeing that and holding that was really crazy. It's a super smooth snake. Mud snakes, if you've seen them, they're gorgeous animals.
Yeah, they are.
Just the reds and the blacks and everything. So holding that was really cool. And then a lot of glass lizards, which was really cool to see.
I love those things, man.
Yeah, dude. I've caught them before, but we don't get them where I am in South Carolina. So it was just really cool to see those. I mean, I'm sure we got over 20 of those on the trip. So, and seeing them move across the road when you're road cruising, they're just like going crazy. It's like a racer that has no traction all over the place. So it's really funny to see that. But yeah, man, the place down there was so big that road cruising was really just like the most effective way to find stuff. So I put a lot of miles on the truck. The truck worked out good because everyone was able to get in the back and able to have a party going down. So it was good, dude. It was good. We missed you. We talked about you the whole time, being like, I wish Brenden was here.
Yeah, man, I wish I could have been there.
Yeah, next year.
Yeah, we're already planning to like have some money put back and stuff for next year. So I think Chrissy and I and the baby are going to come down, and wherever it's going to be. I'm assuming Florida next year, right?
Yep, Florida.
Whose rattlesnake was Chaz posting?
Oh yeah. So that was Gabe's. So we stopped over at Gabe's house because his house was like a mile from the campground. So
nice.
We were able to go over and see his stuff, and he brought out, it was a batwing. So it's a canebrake Eastern Diamondback hybrid.
Gotcha. That thing was gorgeous, dude.
Yeah, that thing's
so pretty.
That thing's insane. But like venom on that thing, dude. I was asking him about that. Like, apparently it's highly neurotoxic because of the combination of the two venoms, and just like would not be a good day to get bit by something like that. So
I bet not. Yeah, definitely a day ruiner.
Yeah, for sure. maybe a week or a month ruiner, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
So no, that thing was sick. So dude, it was great. It was really good. I felt like it gave me some ideas for some of my native naturalistic setups. It definitely gave me, like, I definitely want to set up a frog tank, kind of like a longleaf pine type closure with a water feature, like kind of like a edge of a cypress swamp going into a longleaf habitat where I can do some spadefoots and some barking tree frogs in there. I think that'd be sick.
Yeah.
Just do a setup like that. The corns too. It was really interesting where the corns were going. So they were crossing over from this like deciduous, like sweet gum type habitat over into this longleaf habitat. So they were going at night. They were moving, at least from the two examples that we had that weren't flipped. So one was going, the one we found at night road cruising was going from the deciduous habitat into the longleaf habitat. And then the one in the morning was going from the longleaf habitat into the deciduous. So I don't know if it was like they're going out to this like longleaf savanna type habitat to like hunt at night, and then going back into the deciduous to like, hang out during the heat of the day. Yeah. And I have no idea if that's like why they were doing it, or they're just, completely not related and they're just both moving. I don't know. But it was interesting to see that and think about like kind of what the behavior there is. But
absolutely, man. It definitely always helps seeing what you keep in the wild. I feel like,
yeah.
And for you, keeping native stuff, it's fairly easy to see them in the wild.
Yeah.
Like for me, I gotta fucking fly to Malaysia to see my shit. So you can just drive a few hours.
yeah. Literally, I can just go out the back pretty much for a lot of the stuff. So I'd love to have Jake on here at some point so we can just talk about because Jake is Jacob Bratz from Longleaf Reptilia, but they've got a segment on their podcast where they kind of talk about things that they've learned from herping in the wild. But I'd love to pick his brain on things he's learned from herping in the wild, just because of the amount of native stuff that he keeps. I mean, that's primarily what he keeps,
Yeah, which is super cool.
Yeah, so seeing just what he thinks about how he keeps yellows, and because he keeps a ton of yellow rat snakes. Just thinking about how he's changed his approach and stuff. So
I wish I could keep native stuff here, man.
Yeah, what's the deal? You need a permit?
Bums me out. A lot of the stuff you just can't keep.
Really?
It's just illegal to keep it.
It's funny to me that you do box turtles, but a corn snake or something you wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah, so I don't know the legality on. I haven't looked into the legality of anything else other than the box turtles. But I mean, if there's a permit system for those, I don't see why there wouldn't be a permit system for other natives. Minus critically endangered, obviously the complete no-go. But
yeah,
I don't know.
Corn snake, because it wasn't that a big thing for Tinley. Corn snakes aren't allowed to be sold there anymore.
I don't know, because I bought those ones a couple years ago. Dude had a table full of them, and they were there when we went. It was a bunch of corn snakes.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe it's just rat snakes. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either.
Because there was somebody dealing with that. Somebody's dealing with legal ramifications from Illinois.
So yeah, that's yeah. I don't know what's going on with that. Yeah, I know it's Eric Westmoreland. I know. What is it? ECW Reptiles? I think. Yeah, they're wanting to charge him a felony or something crazy for producing completely just not even close to wild caught corn snake stuff.
Yeah.
So it's
that's crazy. I don't know.
Illinois is weird, man. It's because I was over this weekend to get the rest of the rock from Chrissy's grandma's for the pond. And so we found 2 or 3 blue-tailed skinks, just little babies that freshly hatched or whatever. Do they hatch? Do they have eggs? Skinks have eggs?
Yeah.
I don't fucking know anything about them. I just know they're pretty.
Those skinks do. I think that.
Okay, I thought so. Yeah. Yeah. But I was talking to her. I was like, it'd be dope to set up a cool little enclosure for a couple of these things, but I don't want to get fucking fined for having a couple skinks in my basement,
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I don't know. It'd be cool to have, though. They're gorgeous, super pretty.
Yeah, I've thought about setting up an enclosure for them and some fence lizards and stuff. I think it'd be cool to keep those, but
yeah, I'll have to hit up our DNR officer and see what the legality of keeping stuff like that is. That's not endangered or anything,
Yeah.
It's all about money, I'm sure. I'm sure if I pay a certain amount, I can pretty much do whatever. That's how the box turtles are. It's a $50 a year permit.
Worth it.
Yeah, to keep and breed and sell babies from them if I so choose.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's cheap, but it's just jumping through the hoops of doing it is kind of whatever,
Yeah.
I could go on a whole tangent about Illinois and their laws, but we'll save that for another podcast.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to mention before we get into this topic that we've got lined up is I got a new turtle over the week.
Did you? When the hell did you get a new turtle?
I told you about it, man. I got a southern painted turtle.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And so I was thinking about you when I got it because its scientific name is Chrysemys dorsalis.
Nice.
So, yeah.
What a perfect scientific name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of dorsalis, actually, I don't know. I don't know when mine are coming in, but they should be here soon, I'm hoping.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It was supposed to be this month, and they haven't been here yet, so I got to
Gotta figure out when they're coming.
Figure that out. I don't know what the hell's going on with the I think from what I saw, the shipment got like pushed back, I believe.
The shipment into are they coming
into Canada?
Okay.
I guess got pushed back till next month.
They're coming out of Germany?
Yeah. So from what I can like piece together, because I don't know, I mean the people listening, I know like I have a lot of family members that listen that aren't into the reptile like hobby. They don't really know much about it, but like from what I piece together, she gets them she has a connection in Germany who is like a cat gecko Malaysian reptile guy.
Yeah.
And he gets them from like Malaysia.
Okay.
Is how I kind of put it together.
So
he breeds them himself. So like the Cameroon Highland locality ones I got last year are captive bred. Like he bred those himself from wild caughts that he imported in. The Dorsalis I'm getting are like long-term captives from Sabah, I think.
Okay.
Is where they came from, if I'm not mistaken.
Gotcha.
So yeah. Awesome. But I guess there's I don't know. I don't want to like speak out of turn on what's the issue, but I just know it got pushed back a month or whatever. So
get them here now, damn it!
I want them now. Let me pay my $230 and get them here. Damn it!
Yeah. I feel you, man. It's exciting waiting on something like that.
Dude, it was so expensive though. Like it's one of those things where like I wanted captive bred just because I know how finicky they are, but I couldn't not at least get a pair. You know.
Yeah, and I think it'll help your breeding stock too, because you'll be at what for Dorsalis?
It'll be 2.2.
Yeah,
so
which will be great. Be able to mix bloodlines and have some level of genetic diversity in the hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're she sent me a picture of a group of like 15 of them. If I had the money, I would have bought them all, but I don't have whatever that would have been. $6-7 grand to drop on some geckos. Christy would have probably cut my head off. So I sent her like a group of like 4 to pick from that I wanted a pair out of. So whatever, a pair out of those. So I kind of know what I'm getting, but it's still gonna kind of be a surprise, which is kind of cool, I guess. But
yeah, kind of a box opening. You know the gender, and that's it.
Yeah, the goal is to like really up the group of Dorsalis next year, hopefully. Like I'm gonna look for them at Tinley, which I doubt I'm gonna see any, but most of them are just like most are just like the Malaysian type.
Yeah,
a lot of them.
You mean Dorsalis? You're saying?
Yeah, Dorsalis.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say we saw a good number of the Malaysian ones.
I bought a good number of Malaysian ones.
Yeah, you bought all the ones at the show.
I bought like 2 pairs of them.
Everything else was lone males.
Yeah, which is crazy. But yeah,
Brenden,
I want to get another. I want a dozen of each, which sounds like a lot, but I feel like to really do it right and really get a good breeding program, you kind of need 6 pairs or so.
Yeah, no, I think, and that allows you to get bloodlines going. Like I was saying, like have some genetic diversity and being able to provide strong, healthy stock and have good holdbacks and everything like that. So
and be able to give like females a year off in between, you know, so you can breed 3 a year. And then another group of 3 the next year, give the first 3 off and just kind of cycle them that way.
Yeah. And for when you start vending, like regardless, you'll probably have babies. So like,
yeah, exactly. I like to have babies like all year.
Yeah.
You know, have babies hatching.
Yeah.
So
be able to load that table up with leopard geckos and cat geckos and
monkey
lizards.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Awesome, man. But yeah, that Southern Painted I got.
Yeah, sorry, I went on a fucking whole tangent there.
No, you're good, dude. You're good. You're good. He's super sick. He's like 4.5 inches and he's like full grown, which is why I think like if you're gonna get a pet turtle, either got to be a Mother Musk or Southern Painted, because they're just the perfect size to have in an aquarium. Like he could be in a 40 or 50 gallon aquarium for his entire life. And be perfectly fine. And they're just sick. They're really pretty. They've got this nice orange stripe down their back, and the painted turtle colors on the side. So
yeah,
super pretty turtle. He's got a little bit of stuck scutes or basically like turtles. For anyone who doesn't know turtles, they shed just like a snake or something would, but they don't shed all at once. It's like in pieces. So they like pieces of their scute, or their like the top layer of keratin on their scute will fall off basically. And so he's got a little bit of stuck scutes going on. And then he's also just got some mineral deposits from hard water, which we talked about on the last 2 episodes ago, that I don't have hard water. So that's nice. So hopefully that will kind of help expedite the process of the minerals kind of coming out of his shell. So
yeah,
be able to get him looking real nice and pretty. And would love to get a couple females to go along with him, because I'd love to.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, they're nice too, because they're separate. They're full separate species from the other painted turtles. So like the Chrysemys picta. Nice. So like Easterns are Picta picta and Westerns are Picta something, whatever. They're all subspecies. Yeah. And in South Carolina, we're regulated on number of native species we can have. We can only have 10 native turtles total, and you can't breed them or sell them. So these are not native, and they're full species. So yeah, so I'm super stoked on that for sure. So
oh yeah, man, that's awesome.
Yeah. Another turtle to the group. We got 17 turtles going on now. So
that's crazy, dude.
Yeah, dude. I have 2 more turtles than I do snakes, which is crazy, because that was not the case. That was not the case as of a year ago. So
hey, man, I know the feeling.
Yeah.
I was all snakes a year ago.
Mm-hmm. I'm about to be one less snake too, because I'm going to send my my citrus tiger up to Zach. So
yeah, to breed with Sriracha.
Yeah, Sriracha, and then also his albino female. So
and then apparently he's sending me babies from that pairing, even though I told him I don't want them.
Come on, man! You got to have a citrus tiger. That'll be sweet, dude.
I don't want that damn abomination of a nut carpet.
Yeah, it is.
No, because for people who don't know, I sold Sriracha, my big gorgeous female tiger, to our buddy Zach when I was like downsizing the snakes a lot, because he already had her at his house anyway, so it was kind of a no-brainer. So I hooked him up on her, and I guess he thought he didn't pay enough for her, so he's sending me babies whenever she does produce.
Yeah. So you could keep them, raise them up for a minute, and then sell them or do whatever.
I mean, I'll probably definitely keep one just because it's a Sriracha baby, but I don't plan on keeping many. Because she should drop. I mean, she's a big girl. She should drop a decent clutch. I'm assuming. So
yeah,
it'd be nice to have diversity at the table. When I start doing shows and stuff. So
yeah, those will be sick. They're gonna be like electric orange,
especially like because she's so like old school tiger looking. Like the phenotype is just like very old school Balin tiger, and then the citrus tiger stuff is just fucking incredible. So yeah, it's gonna be some insane babies, dude.
Yeah, I'm excited for that clutch. I need a female out of that, and then a male out of the albino clutch, and I'll be good to go. So,
dude, I want to get. I know, like, I'm out of the snake thing. I'm not a snake guy anymore, but I'd love to do some albino breadline, man. I would love it, especially with the melanistic stuff. How cool would that be?
That'd be sick, dude. That'd be sick.
Ben would probably kill me, but I'd love to do it.
But if they were full hets that you were selling, like if you did, for ones that you didn't keep, I feel like people would still buy them. That's the biggest problem with carpet crosses is like you don't want to create a bunch of hets in the in the process of like that you can't sell, And so like het albino breadlie, although they might not look great, like people will buy them because they can be like, I can make albino breadlie crosses, and then
I can make a creamsicle carpet basically.
Yeah, which are sick.
And like I definitely want to wait until we kind of figure out the like mode of inheritance on what's going on with those, and then I'd like to cross it into some albino stuff just to do it, just to see, like, me 2 years ago would like be losing my shit hearing me say this now, but I think it'd be cool.
To me, it's like there's value associated with the animal, so you're good there. Mm-hmm. These things are never going back. Good there.
Right.
We have so many bredli. Like
Agreed.
we're not worried about like not having enough bredli.
Yeah.
And we're trying to protect pure bredli. Like if you
Yeah.
bred it to a male, an albino female to a male, like there's no harm in that. I
Right.
feel, you know,
Yeah, I
as
don't
long
think
as
so
the
either.
babies have a place to go, and I think they would. Especially just within our group, man. Like I would take a pair of those just to
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
head albino bredli that I could breed back to each other, and then breed it back to another pure bredli that I have, and then 75% bredli albinos or something.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely. So I think that's going to be if I do add any more carpets, it might be an albino eventually. But
yeah.
so I'm keeping that Russian Peterson boy from Billy. I'm keeping him. I decided so I can have a pair of coastals just in case on the off chance I do want to breed snakes down the road. I have just that normal female from Billy, and then that Russian Peterson boy, and the pair of bredli. So and the Bairds. She's still hanging around here too, but that's it for snakes, man. That's all I got.
I'm surprised you got rid of that NDB girl. She was.
I wouldn't have if it didn't go where it went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's in a good spot for sure.
They're both of the reds are in, and they're in great hands, so I can't complain.
Yeah. I need to get a male eventually for my red. But
I know a guy.
I know. I think for now, she's gonna grow up and we're gonna make red jags, and that's gonna be fun. Only 1 year. I'm just gonna do it.
Hey man, red jags are dope. They look awesome. You know.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm stoked on that. But
look at us talking about snakes. Can you believe it?
I know. This is a lizard podcast. It's a lizard podcast. But with that, I do think we should get into our main topic of the evening.
Yeah, we got a lot to cover. And this is probably going to end up being like a 2-part series, maybe a 3-parter if we really stretch it and like really go deep.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely going to be at least a 2-parter. So it'll be like this episode, and then not next episode, not the following episode, but the next episode will be part 2 because we got 2 pretty great guests lined up for the next couple episodes. So,
yep.
Yeah.
No, I think it'll be good. I think this is a long overdue topic for us. You know, I think we went into a bunch of different things with like backgrounds, and we had our segment into aquarium filtration and turtle filtration and stuff, which I do think that there's going to be a lot of concepts there that we talked about that we can apply here as far as substrate and stuff. So I do think it's still a good foundation, but I think this is long overdue, this conversation, because I think it's a topic that can get pretty complex for people, like, or expensive depending on the route you go. Right. So I think the goal that we can kind of outline here is how to do it yourself and you know, save money in that way, and then how to do it properly so you're not making mistakes.
Yeah, so, absolutely. And we've touched on a lot of this like in passing in a couple episodes, but this series here we're gonna really nerd out on dirt and bugs and plants and everything that is associated with building a proper bioactive. I know people like that's a trigger word for some people, but like, you know, naturalistic setup.
Yep.
Basically.
Yeah. And so I think what we're not going to do is talk about, you know, the enclosure you get and the size and things like that. Like I think that's more of another conversation for like species specific, and it's so variable, and a lot of this stuff will be variable, but I think this is more so like internally what you've got going on inside, and then also like the equipment and stuff that you need to use to run it appropriately.
Yeah. And for me personally, it's like I'm going to be strictly talking about tropical humid setups because that's all I have. I don't have any like arid desert species here that are bioactive. Everything I have is like very rainforest, jungle, high humidity species. So
yeah. And I can speak to it too a little bit on the temperate side, like
for sure,
native setup and how that differs. Plot twist or newsflash, it's not very different. It's really, as long as you're not keeping something arid, it falls in this tropical category, and the only difference is the amount you water it, and basically some other features that we'll talk about. But
yeah.
So I think we should start with like what bioactive is, right? Like we should
Yeah.
go ahead and define that.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm sure there's somebody out there listening that has no idea
Yeah,
what it entails, really,
yeah.
you know.
Or they hear it and they're like, okay, it's a buzzword. It just means, having
It just means put
was
bugs in your
set up.
tank.
Yeah, or just put bugs in there. Yeah,
Yeah.
which it's not. And we'll talk about all the pieces you need for bioactive. But I was looking up, I did some research before this just to try to figure out the origin and kind of where this came about. But basically, like what I've gathered from my research is that the term bioactive essentially refers to a substance having a biological effect or biologically active. And so the term first came around for reptiles in the mid 1990s, and it came from the dart frog community.
Mm-hmm.
And they were housed using a bioactive substrate. So the bioactivity piece of it really came from the substratum.
Right.
And so it was originally with the ABG mix, which we'll talk about. That's the standard, the gold standard of especially tropical substrate mixes. And, there's a bunch of variations that you can do that we'll talk about, but that's the OG. And then it's mixed with leaf litter and other organic compounds and includes a cleanup crew of springtails and isopods, which then creates a self-sustainable, self-cleaning living ecosystem. So that's kind of like the baseline of what a bioactive terrarium is. And yeah, I think with that, we can kind of go into like how you achieve that, because there's a ton of ways. So
There is like an infinite way, I think. Like you could probably get 50 people in a room and everybody's going to do it a little bit different.
Yep.
And still, get the same what's the word I'm looking for here?
Outcome.
Yeah, there you go. I had a brain fart, dude. I didn't know what I was trying to say. Yeah, same outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of roads that lead to the same destination.
Mm-hmm. There's a ton of ways to skin the cat.
Yep.
We're going to take it from the approach of like what works for us and what we've seen, and what can work. And then you can kind of extrapolate and do what you want with it. But
yeah, because like I don't know about you, but me personally, I've tried to make probably 3 or 4 different mixes in the past year and a half or so. And like my current one is new, spoiler alert, me and Jack pretty much make it the same way. I just add one extra ingredient in mine, but and it works wonders, dude. It is amazing. So we'll get into that though.
So Brenden, from your perspective, like what's the point of substrate in a terrarium? What's the goal? Like why do you use it? How do you use it? Everything.
I mean, it's like the building blocks, in my opinion, to like a decent ecosystem. Like you're trying to, you're not trying to necessarily bring the wild indoors, which I feel like a lot of people think when they hear bioactive that, you always hear the slice of the jungle in your home, which I think is not feasible, really. You're never going to replicate nature. It's just not going to happen, no matter what equipment you use, what substrate you make, you're never going to fully get there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But the substrate is like, it's your base, literally, it's like what everything else is built off of. If you have a shit substrate layer, you're not going to grow plants well. Your bugs are probably going to die. Your animals could die. Your animals could die if you're trying to breed animals and they lay the eggs in the substrate and it's subpar, too dry, too wet. Those eggs aren't going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's literally the building blocks of building a successful naturalistic setup.
Yeah,
it's the most important part, in my opinion, minus like lighting and heat and stuff. But like substrate is, in my opinion, the most important part to the whole thing.
100%. It is where life is derived from. In an aquarium, your water is where the life is derived from. In a terrarium, your soil, your dirt, your substrate is where life comes from. It's where you're able to fertilize your plants and your bugs and everything else can thrive, and allows your animal something to burrow in and sit on and interact with and touch and feel and be a part of nature. So I think it's the most important part, and it's where bioactivity comes in. Like this is where this is the fundamental piece to bioactivity, and I think we can spend a good amount of time on it.
Dude, I can nerd out about dirt all night long.
Yeah,
I love it so much.
I do too. We should spend a good amount of time on it. I think we should start first with the under layer beneath the substrate, which is key if you're doing a tropical setup. And so this is where kind of the difference comes between temperate and tropical, and it's really just about the amount of water you're using. So I think you use drainage layers, correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And everything.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the purpose of the drainage layer, how you use it, what you use?
Yeah, so the whole point of a drainage layer is, for me personally, with the tropical, with the cat geckos and the monkey lizards and everything, the Oidura even, I have drainage layers in their cages too. But especially the cat geckos, I spray them a lot. Like they get beat with water a lot. So when you spray an enclosure that doesn't have a drainage layer, that water drains through your substrate, depending on how deep it is, various levels of time it takes to reach the bottom. But once it reaches the bottom, it's still touching the substrate, right? So the substrate is basically sopping wet in the bottom side, and that water has nowhere to go, which can host a bunch of, bad things. Mold is the biggest one, obviously.
And anaerobic bacteria.
Exactly. It can drown your isopods, which is possible, believe it or not. You can actually kill your isopods by getting them too wet, which I found out personally. So the whole point of a drainage layer is that water seeps through your substrate and it drips into, well, let me back up. So a drainage layer I use clay balls, like the horticulture clay balls I use for like plants and stuff. You can use lava rock. A lot of people use lava rock. You can use plastic egg crate light diffusers. You can use I've seen people use like the filter, like the black filter. What's it called?
Sponge. Yeah.
Basically, there's like a sponge layer on the bottom. Yeah. Anything that can allow the water to drip from the substrate and not sit in the substrate, but sit underneath it, basically. And then that water you can either drain, or in my cages, it's not enough water to drain, so it eventually just evaporates back so it just kind of makes that cycle. The drainage layer that's necessary. You can't. I mean, I guess you can if you're not doing a tropical setup, you can get away without using it. But I think I think you have to in a tropical setup. Like it's a necessary part.
Yeah, and so like for me with like I've got corn snakes and a bunch of different native snakes and stuff that are in bioactive enclosures that do not have drainage layers, and it's just because I don't water them enough.
Right.
To have it's not necessary for them to have a drainage layer because there's not going to be ever any sitting water at the bottom, which is fine. And your bioactive setup will work if you don't like the water isn't the key to the bioactive setup. It is kind of, but like you can have a temperate bioactive setup without misting it like crazy. Like as long as you pick your isopods, and we can talk about specific isopod species and stuff. And depending on the isopods you pick, like you can have a functioning bioactive system without watering it a ton. But things like the cat geckos, especially things like dart frogs, where you're going to be watering them or misting them probably 3 times a day, maybe more. That's a significant amount of water that's going to cause a lot of issues, like you said, with mold and anaerobic bacteria. So we talked previously about the water cycle in aquariums, and we'll talk about this more with the substrate, but basically the same cycle is happening in the substrate, and you need this aerobic bacteria, which is bacteria that has oxygen, basically. So aerobic is with oxygen, anaerobic is without. Anaerobic is bad bacteria. Aerobic is good bacteria. And so having that anaerobic bacteria is what causes the smell. If you have a bad smell in your terrarium, it's because of anaerobic bacteria. Your cage, we were talking to Eddie about this, but your terrarium should smell like the forest floor.
That's how you know you're doing it right. If you open the cage and it smells just like fresh dirt,
Mm-hmm.
you've hit the sweet spot.
Yep. Exactly. If it smells in any way gross, it means that you've got an issue going on there, and it's probably water related.
Yeah, that's a big thing too with people, especially when they come to my house and they know I keep reptiles. The first question always is, does your house smell? Does your room stink? And it's like, you can walk in my rooms and they smell nothing. You don't smell anything,
Mm-hmm.
So and every single cage is filled with dirt. I have hundreds and hundreds of pounds of dirt in these two rooms, and you walk in. If I blindfolded you and walked you in the room, you would not know.
Yeah.
You would just smell nice, fresh dirt.
Yep. You smell like
which is an amazing smell, by the way. I love it so much.
It is. It's awesome. Okay, so drainage layer. So we've talked about a bunch of different ways that you could do that. Yeah. And then most people put a screen or like a separator there, right, between the soil and the drainage layer, and that's really just to keep the soil out of the drainage layer to prevent capillary action, which is basically where the dirt pulls the water back up into the dirt and keeps it saturated, which you don't want happening, kind of.
Yeah.
But you do not. You want to talk about that?
So I've done it both ways.
Okay.
The annul cage, which was the old monkey lizard cage, does have window screen in between. None of the cat geckos do. Actually, I think I was talking to you about it. I don't know if when you were here or we had a conversation at some point on the phone or whatever. And you had mentioned that like it's kind of unnecessary as long as your drainage layer is like thick enough, right?
Yeah.
So, and the cat geckos are in 12, 12, 18 exoteras, and my drainage layer is 2-3 inches deep. Like it's a pretty deep drainage layer for such a small enclosure. So I don't use screen in any of those, and I have yet to have any issues with the substrate sucking the water back up into the substrate and creating that nasty, shit you don't want.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're, I guess if you're paranoid about it, you can use the screen. Doesn't matter in my opinion. Like you can use it or you can not use it, and it's gonna net the same result.
Yeah.
Either way.
The reason I had said that to you, and the reason I haven't used drainage layer, or I have used drainage layers but haven't used screen in the past, is I've was listening to John Courtney Smith from Arcadia on a podcast, and he was talking about it, and he basically came to the conclusion, like you're saying, as long as the drainage layer is deep enough and you don't have, it's not full of water,
right?
You're not really going to get that capillary action pulling the water back up. And the only thing the screen is doing in that case is preventing your plant roots from going down into that drainage layer.
Absolutely.
And you've got all that space for the drainage layer, and your plants can only grow in the soil above it, and you're basically removing all that space for their roots to really go down in, which is super valuable. Root space is huge for your plants.
Yeah, and I've noticed in the cat gecko cages, they all just have pothos because it's just so easy to grow and it's so cheap. But if you look, like especially on the sides of the cage, if you look down on the side, you can see the roots going from the substrate, and they literally go to the drainage layer, and they just start going crazy. And then the plants they're growing fantastic. They look gorgeous. They look fake. They're doing so well,
Yeah.
So I mean, I'll never use window screen again. I didn't on the big monkey lizard cage either.
Yeah. Yeah. It just, it gives them an easier access to water too, because all that water's down there at the bottom. And
absolutely
allows plants to just find the water easier and then be able to absorb it. And they're still getting the nutrients because it's coming down through all the soil. So it's nutrient rich when it gets down there.
Yeah.
So, okay. So we've got drainage layer covered. There's a lot of ways to do it. We talked about all the ways. It's much simpler than your soil. So we got to talk soil. So let's talk dirt. I wrote down the original ABG mix just because I wanted to say that, because that's the OG, that's this gold standard, and I think we should mention it in case you want to do it. It's a little bit outdated, and I'll explain why. But The original one is 2 parts tree fern, 1 part coconut coir, 1 part charcoal, 1 part sphagnum moss, and then 2 parts fir/orchid bark. And so when I'm saying parts, that could be anything. It's just like a ratio, basically. So if you're adding all these parts up, you've got 3 individuals and then 2 twos, so you're at 7 total parts. So if you think about that as like 7 cups, like 2 of those cups would be tree ferns, one of them would be coconut coir, and etc.
Yeah.
So that's the traditional ABG mix. Tree fern is becoming increasingly harder to find. I don't know if you could find it. I can't find it.
I've never seen it anywhere.
Yeah. It used to be really common. And I can't remember the tree that it used to come off of, but it's basically like a shredded bark from a tree, I believe.
Gotcha.
And it's not common anymore. And so we'll talk through our kind of mixes that we've started using since that are super accessible. But everything else in this, except, well, the orchid bark too is a little bit less common, but you can get that. It's like you can buy that at PetSmart. It's that Repti bark is orchid bark. You can also buy it at Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever hardware store you have. I don't know where Menards is if you're Midwestern or whatever, but you can buy
Love me a Menards, man.
Do you?
I love it. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've never heard of Menards until I was on YouTube watching videos and people were talking about going to Menards, and I'm like, what?
Menards is dope, man.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
It really is. It's like the bougie Home Depot. I love it.
Is it? Okay, so it's bougie. Yeah. I didn't know that. Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't call it bougie, but they definitely have like, it's not just like a big hardware store. They got all kinds of shit.
They have good plant selections.
I've actually never looked for plants there, to be honest. I need to, though.
We should do like an episode where we go get a bunch of houseplants from local hardware stores and like review them.
Dude, don't tempt me with a good time. I'm down with that. I do that every weekend anyway.
We should do that for sure.
Yo, I have to pee real quick. I'm about to piss my pants, dude.
Okay.
I didn't pee beforehand. Me and my pregnant self. I'll be right back.
So, ABG mix. So that's what that is.
Yeah.
It's the gold standard. It's what they originally used. It came from the the Atlanta Botanical Garden, which was a really renowned place back in the day. But a lot of those, especially the tree fern, isn't super common anymore, and so people have been modifying it for a ton of time. Like if you wanted to go on YouTube and just look up making substrate for a reptile enclosure or making bioactive substrate, whatever, like there's a ton of videos on it. And you can definitely learn. But Brenden and I are going to talk through kind of our mixes and why we do them the way that we do them. And you can kind of alter your mixes just depending on, the animals you have. We're going to talk about some of the things that you should stay away from. But outside of that, the theme of this podcast is trying shit. So make a mix and see how you like it. I know, Brenden, you've been experimenting for a good bit now on mixes and you haven't hurt any animals doing that. So you might as well try it out. So, but yeah, what's your mix, man? What's your standard?
So it started. So like I said, I've made a few different variations of this same mix. I've like added things, taken things away, yada, yada. I used to use like a lot of organic topsoil in my mixes.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones I get at my local Home Depot it's good dirt. Don't get me wrong, but for an enclosure, I don't like it because it comes with like, you open the bag and there's like pieces of plastic in there, and it's just like the long like sticks of whatever it is mixed in there, and it's not just dirt, it's just basically filled dirt for your yard.
Mm-hmm.
So I've strayed away from that. And then I've tried so much shit, dude. I've tried sand. I've tried mixing in just all kinds of different stuff. And like I've set on like this current mix now that is phenomenal. I love it so much. I'm not going to mix any other way ever, probably. So I buy, and all this is on Amazon. I buy all this on Amazon. I can make a massive tub of this for like $100, and that may sound like a lot, but a tub lasts me like forever, basically, just months and months and months, you know. So I do. Let me unlock my phone here. So I get the compressed bricks of cocoa fiber.
Mm-hmm.
I get like the 6-pack. So I do these in bricks. So I'll do like 6 bricks of like each of these basically just to make, and it takes a few hours because 6 bricks is a lot of substrate, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I do 6 bricks of the compressed cocoa fiber. I do the same with cocoa chips. So I do another 6. So I'll mix those together first, get those like nice and mixed. And then Jack put me on the worm castings, which is a fucking game changer, dude. So I just buy like just a bag. I don't know how big the bag is of worm castings, and I throw that whole thing in there because I make a lot. Like I said, I make a lot of substrate, so you can definitely scale this down. Like you don't have to make. If you have 1 or 2 animals, you're not gonna make this much substrate at a time, probably. So it's like a 1-to-1 ratio is basically how I do it for everything. So yeah, I do worm castings, and then I'll do like a medium-ish size bag of charcoal. I like to put a lot of charcoal in my stuff just for like the aeration, and that just works well in my opinion. And then I will do like a 12-ounce brick of sphagnum moss, which makes like a 5-gallon bucket's worth of sphagnum moss. And I like that specifically for the cat geckos because it stays wet longer, so the humidity stays higher longer. You know, I don't have to, if I miss, for whatever reason, I miss a day of spraying, it doesn't really affect it much. So the sphagnum moss kind of keeps the substrate damp, but not too wet, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my mix. That's basically all I do. So it's just cocoa fiber, cocoa chip, charcoal, worm casting, sphagnum moss. That's it. Okay. Mix all that together. And when you're mixing it, you want it damp, but you don't want it sopping wet, right? So it's kind of the same thing with, like, if you're mixing up a box for eggs with vermiculite, you want it, if you grab it in your hand and you squeeze it, you want it to stick together without dripping water. And it's the same thing for the substrate, you know? So you want to mix, because obviously these compressed bricks, you have to mix with water to get them to expand, right? So if you can grab your mix, squeeze it, no water comes out, but you open your hand and it stays clumped in a ball, you've hit the sweet spot, you know? So yeah, that's what I do. That's what I've kind of landed on. It grows plants insanely well. It stays wet without being too wet. The humidity is insane. The isopods absolutely love it. Yeah, it's fantastic. I use it in all my stuff. I even have the same mix in my snake cages, just without the drainage layer, because there's no like bugs or anything in those cages. But the monkey lizards have it. All the cat geckos have it. The anole cage has it. The Oedura even have the same mix. And it's so versatile, and it just works so well, man. I love it.
Yeah. It's very similar to my mix, and it's kind of the gold standard of mixes now as far as stuff you can make at home. Like I was saying, the ABG mix is a little bit outdated because of the tree fern, but this is kind of what people are moving towards, and just different variations of that. Like some people, instead of using the cocoa chips, they'll use like I was saying, like the repti bark, the tree bark or whatever. And so, yeah, so mine's very similar. It's equal parts cocoa fiber and cocoa chip. The chip is really nice because it provides like a chunkiness to the soil that allows for better aeration. So you're getting like that aerobic bacteria through there. It allows the plant's roots to grow through better. It provides spots for them to go down, and it also gives something for the cleanup crew to digest, which we'll talk about. But so I use equal parts of those. The worm castings, which is your fertilizer basically for your plants. It's what, because cocoa core itself has very little nutrients in it. It's kind of like almost inert. It's an organic material, but it's not, it doesn't provide a lot of nutrition for your plants. So you need something to provide the nutrition and the fertilizer for your plants to grow. So worm castings are the best natural alternative rather than like an actual fertilizer, like especially if you're keeping frogs or something sensitive, like you wouldn't want to use an actual fertilizer in with the plants.
Yeah.
So the worm castings and then the charcoal. And the charcoal, the other thing it does outside the aeration, which we talked about, and providing, a less, it doesn't allow the soil to compact, which is where you get that anaerobic bacteria if it's super compressed, because the air can't get into it, the plants can't dig through it, the cleanup crew can't get through it. It's just a bad recipe. So the charcoal helps with that, but it's also it's carbon, and so carbon, like we talked about in the filtration episode, it's a form of chemical filtration, and so basically in between these pieces or these atoms of carbon, there's like holes between where the atoms collect, and so that sucks up all the bad, like the ammonia and stuff like that. It actually sucks it up inside of the carbon. And so that the carbon acts like a filtration for your substrate. And something we'll talk about when we talk about, substrate maintenance, but like that carbon's a reason that you want to occasionally refresh your substrate, because that carbon will get overloaded with that bad bacteria and ammonia and stuff like that. And you'll want to change that out and put fresh carbon in there so it can actually continue doing its job. The other thing I use, so I don't use sphagnum, like Brenden was saying, because I just personally have trouble mixing it in. A lot of times it just comes back up to the top. And maybe that's user error, my inability to mix. Maybe I need to get one of those mixing things down there. But for some reason, I just can't mix it in well, so I avoid using it. And a lot of the stuff that I'm keeping isn't super tropical, so it's but the other thing that I add in there, only for my native stuff because of other issues, is I use the mini pine bark nuggets, and so I'll mix those in there as another way for me to kind of loosen the soil and add some dimension to the soil to allow the plants to grow better. But pine has a bad reputation for killing reptiles. Native stuff, obviously, it does not. A lot of these animals come from pine habitat, and they're pretty much all they're living in is pine straw and pine bark and stuff like that. So for whatever reason, they're used to it, and so I wouldn't use it on something like a ball python, but for my corn snakes, absolutely. And it gives it a really natural look. So I'll use the pine bark nuggets, the mini ones, for them, and that just, like I said, allows for more structure in the substrate. But that's my mix.
What I also have been doing, outside of like, I stuff my cages with leaf litter, obviously. That's kind of like your next layer, or at least for me, it's like drainage, substrate, leaf litter, It's like, I feel like it's fairly standard. But I find like a bunch of like small bark where I collect my wood, and I'll kind of break that up and bury it in the substrate as well. Again, just for it to break down and just kind of add to that whole cycle.
Yeah.
And the isopods absolutely love it, as you could imagine. So every time I pick up one of those pieces, that's like kind of where they're congregated, is around that piece of bark. So I do that in all the cages also. I just kind of bury pieces here and there. I just started doing that recently, so there's no real rhyme or reason, but I just something to try out, I guess. But
yeah, well, it adds to the natural piece of it, and so like the natural cycle in the wild would be that these items, whether it's bark or sticks or leaves or whatever, fall from the tree above and then are naturally consumed by these mechanical functions, such as like isopods, worms, stuff like that. They'll break it down, and then it becomes part of the soil and is added to like the nutrients of the soil. And so it's creating that process, that breakdown process.
Yeah.
In there.
Same with leaf litter too. It does the same thing.
Yeah. So we should talk about leaf litter, I think, unless you want to talk more about the dirt.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to add to the dirt.
And there's other things that we'll talk about, like when we talk about the cleanup crew, because there's more, and we'll talk about the actual nitrate cycle and everything in the dirt. But as far as the actual mixes go and stuff like that.
I think, I really do feel like that if you've never mixed substrate and you want to try, I would definitely go with that mix.
Yeah.
With or without the sphagnum moss, I don't think it's that big of a deal if you use it or not use it. But yeah, I would definitely try it out. Like I said, it's fairly cheap. You can buy everything you need on Amazon if you want.
Yep.
And you can buy it in bulk, or you can buy it by like the single compressed brick, however you want to do it. It's going to be cheaper than going to a pet store. Or I know, like, I love my local reptile store, but obviously they're a business and have to make money, so their stuff's a little more expensive.
Yeah.
But I mean, Amazon has the market cornered on everything these days, so you can get it pretty cheap on Amazon.
Yeah.
Right to your door next day.
Yeah.
So
the other thing too is a lot of this stuff, the majority outside of the coconut core, which you might even be able to get, but you can get almost all of this stuff at a hardware store if you want.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to set something up today, you could go to Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, whatever, and get all this stuff. So,
absolutely.
But yeah, Amazon's always a good move. So
it's top dog, man.
The other thing I want to say before we do move on to leaf litter and stuff, and I apologize, my neighbor's blowing off his yard. It's completely dark outside, and I don't know if you can hear that. I apologize. But sand in your substrate is another thing that we should talk about because, if you look up a substrate mixture online, a lot of times it'll say include sand, which isn't bad.
Yeah.
But you got to think about kind of like what the animal that you're setting this enclosure up for. And so if it's not a burrowing species, if it's a tropical species or something like that, like you don't need the sand. And honestly, the sand is a inhibitor to like the natural processes because it's just kind of like an inert thing that just takes up space and allows your soil to compact better.
Absolutely.
But if you have a burrowing species and you include sand, it'll make your soil denser and it'll allow it to hold burrows better. And so something that is going to, like maybe you're thinking about like a fire skink or something that's going to be making tunnels and stuff all through there. Like you would definitely want to include something like sand to kind of make that soil more dense and hold burrows.
Yeah,
I think that's, you wouldn't want to use it on something that you're trying to grow like a ton of plants in or something like that, because it's not great for growing plants in. So,
and that's why I stopped using it. Like that was my initial thought was, oh, everybody put sand in there and there must be a reason I'm going to put sand in there. Yeah. And like my plants just did not do well in that type of soil. And even now, like the mix I use now, I even use for some of my house plants and they love it. So it's fantastic, dude. It's a great mix.
The worm castings change everything.
Dude, they really do, man. It's a game changer.
All right, so let's talk leaf litter. So, and just botanicals in general. So, like, what do you do for your leaf litter? How do you get it? Like, what are you trying to do? Like, are you trying to do it like a dense, thick layer, just a spreading on top? Like, what's your approach?
So I collect all of mine from my yard or where I collect my wood. I do boil it just because, especially in my yard, we have a lot of ants, and I don't want. I mean, if I do have it, like there are ants in my enclosure. Like it's just I use wood from outside, and I don't really do much outside of rinse it off for the most part. So I mean, I'm sure there's ants running around my enclosure somewhere at some point, but I do like to boil the leaf litter. I collect it by the trash bag load every fall. I will get 3 or 4 trash bags full, and that pretty much lasts me the year until the next fall. So I collect all of my stuff from outside. So for the cat geckos, and I say this a lot, and people are probably getting tired of hearing it, but like the cat geckos love sleeping in leaves. So for those guys, I really do a thick layer of leaf litter in their enclosures. And I like to get like different size leaves also. Just kind of, it adds texture, it adds interest, but it also, the bigger leaves, the cat geckos can really climb inside of them and sleep in them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do a thick layer in those guys' enclosure. The rest of them, everything has leaf litter, but it's just like varying degrees of amounts. Like for the monkey lizards, there's some in there, but it's nothing too crazy because they're never on the ground. And the snakes, there's really not much in there either, to be honest. But yeah, the cat geckos for sure, I do a thick layer. And then in the monkey lizard cage and in the anole cage, I have pine cones from outside also that I've kind of thrown in there just to kind of experiment and see.
Mm-hmm.
And the isopods are all over them all the time. They love it. Because I mean, I know we're going to talk about isopods, but I also collect those from my yard also. So they're like native Illinois isopods. Like I don't really buy isopods.
Yeah.
I have like a whole colony of them breeding and growing in the gecko room currently in a tub. So I just pick out from there. Yeah, I use pine cones. I use those little, like, I don't know what they're from. They look like little
like seed pods.
Yeah, but I don't know what tree they come from, to be honest. I just like, people make fun of me because if I go to like a relative's like house and they have pine cones in their yard, like I'm asking for a baggie and I'm picking all those bitches up and I'm taking them home, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's botanical wise and leaf litter. That's pretty much all I do. It's nothing too crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I just because I don't like boiling them, just because I think I'd get yelled at if I did that.
Has she ever smelled? Listen, hold on. The smell that comes off boiling leaf litter is one of the best smells I've ever smelled in my life. It fills your house, and luckily my girlfriend loves it also. So there's no issues with that. But man, it smells so good.
Yeah, I don't know if the smell. But the other thing too is I like to get specific leaves.
Yeah.
So I can get like kind of like the leaf litter I would expect to see in the habitat I'm trying to replicate. So I do buy my leaf litter, which is sad to say, but I do.
Yeah.
You can. It's not that expensive, and you can get like the specific leaves that you want. So I get like a bunch of oak leaves. I get magnolia leaves. Just different variations of leaves that I feel like would be there. And then I also, the one thing I do collect is pine straw.
Yeah.
But that I just leave out in a black trash bag in the summer on my driveway and just let it cook.
Let it bake.
Yeah. So that's what I do for those. But the thing you do want to make sure is that you're getting it from an area that doesn't have any pesticide.
That's the big thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's really the thing that'll hurt you outside the bugs. Like the pesticide is the main issue. So you definitely want to make sure that you're not getting it from an area that has pesticides. But yeah, collecting pine straw or leaf litter or whatever from natural areas. And I try to, like I was saying, make it kind of replicate or be like similar to the leaf litter I would expect to see in the environment I'm trying to replicate. So like I'm doing a yellow rat snake enclosure and I want to get some oak leaves for that, and try to do like kind of a old oak tree forest kind of vibe.
Yeah.
So just a ton of oak leaves and Spanish moss and stuff like that is what I'm going to go with there. But yeah, I use a ton of nuts and seed pods. And if you want to get exotic with it, like the Bio Dude, if you go there, which we'll talk about, I've got another product from there I want to talk about in a little bit, but they've got a bunch of different seed pods and monkey seed pods and all kinds of seed pods. So you can get really exotic with it and, get your different seed pods in there as accents, and they act as a design. And then also the microfauna will break them down, and it adds that nutrient process within your enclosure. What do you when you put it in your enclosure? Like, are you doing like a deep layer or just a sprinkling on top? Like what's your...
I mean, I don't go super crazy. Especially like the cat gecko enclosures, the substrate layer is so thick that there's really not much room left.
Yeah.
Because the substrate dam in those cages is pretty deep, but like once you get your 2 to 3 inches of your drainage layer and then your substrate, there's really not much room left.
Yeah.
So the small leaves I'll sprinkle and just do like a covering, and then I'll throw in 4 or 5 bigger leaves on top for them to kind of pick from to sleep in.
Yeah.
And
are you doing that like after you've done your hardscape and your plants and stuff, or are you doing that?
Yeah, that's the last thing I put in.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the very last thing that goes in. Because like if you put your leaf litter down and then try to dig a hole for plants, it's just a fucking pain in the ass.
Yep.
So yeah, the leaf litter, the botanicals is like the last thing that happens.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I guess we're doing this in like this is the third thing, but it's the last thing that I add.
Yeah. It's still part of the substrate, but it's
right
last in step. Yeah.
And it makes it look more naturalistic, in my opinion, doing it last than doing it first.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's the thing too, is like like you were saying, like when you start trying to put plants in after you've put your leaf litter in, you get the dirt on top of the leaves, and then it just looks unnatural and just not great. But yeah, so I always think about this though too, because when I first started doing bioactive stuff, like I would be like, oh, I got to think about like a leaf pile, so I would go like an inch or two deep of leaves, and I'm like, well, this isn't actually natural, because if you look at like the rainforest, your leaf litter pile is not, it's very thin because it's breaking down so fast, and so you want to kind of it to be thin. You can even have some of your dirt showing, like it doesn't have to be completely covered. It just needs to look kind of natural, like leaves have fallen, and then just refresh it as it gets broken down by the microfauna.
And if you do too thick of a leaf litter layer and you go to spray,
it doesn't go down.
It doesn't go down to the substrate. It just kind of sticks in the leaves. So your leaves, it'll look wet, but if you dig down, your substrate's gonna be dry as hell.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful with that too if you're doing a tropical setup.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah. Okay. I just want to get your thoughts and what you do on that. So
yeah, I do. I try to do a very thin layer. And then obviously you're going to be adding in, as it breaks down, you're going to constantly be adding in new fresh leaves on top of that and just, kind of keep that cycle going. But yeah, I don't go crazy with the leaf litter.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've got our whole substrate. We've got the whole pie going. What's the next step?
Well, for me, the next step is all the cool bugs and shit, man.
Yep. So then it's microfauna. So
we
were talking about this like filtration process within your substrate and the real like bioactivity, and this is where it starts, is the bugs, because you've created all this soil, but nothing's going to happen to it unless you introduce the right microfauna.
Right.
And so there are two main ones, which are springtails and then isopods. You want to talk a little bit about springtails and kind of what they do?
I'm going to be honest with you, dude. I couldn't even tell you exactly what all they do. To be honest. I just know they're necessary.
Yeah. So they'll eat mold and bacteria.
Yeah.
And detritus in your enclosure. So they're a piece of the cleanup crew. They don't consume as much large ticket items as like your isopods will, but they'll break down, especially mold. Like that's the main thing they consume.
See, that's what I knew, the mold thing. I just didn't know what else. I didn't know if it was strictly mold or if they actually ate other things. I just always knew them as like the mold crew. Yeah.
The mold janitors. Yeah.
The mold janitors.
Yeah. That's the main thing that they'll do. But like if you, like say you fed a snake that's in a bioactive enclosure and it didn't eat, and so then the skin cut that out. Oh, 123.
Oh, that's fucking perfect. Mert.
I was trying to be silent on that, but did not. All right, while we're at it, I'm gonna pee. Oh, all right, so the springtails are going to be consuming, all of that kind of detritus, but if you've got like a mouse or something in there, they will feed on it. It's just not their main thing is going to be the mold and stuff. So
I wasn't fully dumb on that topic. I knew about the mold. Damn it,
you knew about it. You got it.
I know about it.
But those in conjunction with your isopods
Yeah.
are both pieces. So like they'll eat all the mold, and then the isopods will break down your like large ticket items.
Mm-hmm.
Isopods in general are very intimidating topic. I feel like, especially now, because all of a sudden everybody's an isopod breeder, and isopods are like,
dude,
very valuable. Apparently, all of a sudden,
those ones we saw at Tinley were like $200 for like 10 of them.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I collect that shit for free in the backyard.
Yeah. Like the rubber duckies and stuff can be even more. Like they can be like $200 for a singular or something like
There
that.
were some I saw that are like $1,000 for like a small group of some crazy color mutation that this random dude bred in his basement.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Insane.
Yeah.
But hey, there's a market for it. So
there's a market for it. Yeah. But so like you don't need to do those. Like there's a lot.
It's not necessary at all.
Yeah. So Brenden, you're using the native ones, right? And
for the most part, yeah.
Okay. Are you using those in your cat gecko enclosures?
I use them in everything. Minus the snakes, they're in everything. And then the monkey lizard cage has powder orange.
Yep.
Strictly because I was told they are very prolific breeders, and that is true because there are so many of them in there now. It's insane, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I use mostly native, just your typical brown, gray, drab isopods that I collect from my backyard.
Okay. So with the different species, there are some things that help you in determining. So we were talking about the like super tropical enclosures, which are going to be really moist, and then temperate enclosures that would be more dry, and then you have your arids, which we're not going to talk about because it's a whole different game. We need to have somebody on who like actually knows how to do arid bioactives,
absolutely.
because there's a lot more that goes into figuring out like your cleanup crew there, because there are like ways to do that. But isopods and springtails generally need humidity. They need a moist substrate. So generally you need moisture for isopods and springtails across the board. But there are some species that like require less of it and require more.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, isopods do have gills.
Oh.
So they do need to live in at least tropical ones. I think they all have to have some sort of moisture, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I was saying, you can drown them. They cannot live in water, but they do require very moist, humid environments, or they will shrivel up and die because, like I said, they do have gills, which a lot of people don't know, which is crazy.
I didn't know that. That's
yeah. They breathe through gills, man. It's crazy.
So that's
they're like a modified gill, obviously, for like land, but like that's why they need such humid, wet environments.
So that's inherited from their ancestors that came from the ocean.
Right.
Damn, that's crazy.
Pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So there are species that need a lot more humidity and moisture, and then there are some that can be more temperate. So like your native ones, those will do better in a more temperate, less humid environment. You still need moisture. And then I've got a bunch of giant canyon isopods, which are they look pretty much the same as like your native ones, but they're bigger. They're nice, chunky isopods. But
I think we have some of those here too.
Like natively?
I think so, because like there are some I have in there that are fucking monsters, dude.
Okay.
They're huge.
Interesting. So they might be the native ones there.
It could be, yeah. I really don't know what species they are here, but there's a few different phenotypes and sizes for sure.
Okay. Yeah, so those giant canyons are really good for like for my corn snake enclosure.
Yeah,
it'd be really well where I'm not spraying super consistently. I probably spray once or twice a week just to keep some moisture and humidity in the substrate, but it's not a ton. And they do well like that, especially they'll congregate underneath the water bowl.
Yeah, I know here. You would think Illinois isn't very humid, but during the summertime, it is a fucking swamp outside. So my native ones actually do really well in the cat gecko cages.
Okay.
with like heavy spraying, they do pretty well.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean they're coming from the ground, which the ground is always
Right.
so.
They're definitely more temperate, I would imagine, species. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's more tropical species out there, but they are pretty versatile in terms of like humidity and moisture and stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like your powder oranges, your dwarf whites, your powder blues, they're going to need a lot more humidity. They need to be in like a tropical setup in order to do well. They need constant humidity and a lot of water to do well.
Yeah, and a big reason why I don't use any of those fancy ones in the cat gecko enclosures is because they do eat them. Like they will prey on especially the bigger isopods in there. I've caught a couple of them snagging some of the big boys. I'm just like, you're not getting nothing expensive because you're gonna just be eating them anyway.
Yeah, they just consume them.
Which so it's kind of like it's a constant food source for them, you know.
Yeah. Something that's always going to be there. They're not going to eat them all. They're going to breed.
Yeah.
The same way of like keeping guppies in a turtle aquarium. Like
exactly,
the turtles aren't going to get all of them. They're still going to breed, but if they do, it's a good snack for them. So,
and just recently, as in like 2 days ago, I collected a bunch of like snails from the backyard, and I have them in a tub currently.
Okay.
And I really would love. I know snails are very parasitic. They carry a pretty heavy parasite load for the most part. But I would really love to like be able to like breed those and you offer those eventually as a food source for the cat geckos as well. But I don't know how that whole process goes. I've never bred snails before, but like in the wild, cat geckos, like that's a big part of their diet from what I've read is like snails and stuff. So I'd like to get that going too, but I just don't know how many generations in would be safe.
Yeah. That's a topic that we would have to talk to a snail person on, I think.
Yeah, we're gonna have to find somebody because I'd love to offer snails.
Yeah.
Like a food source.
Snails are good too, but I mean that also opens up this whole topic of other microfauna that you add into your enclosure, and there's a ton. You could do earthworms, you could do garden millipedes. You could, I mean, even crickets and mealworms and stuff like that can be good. Roaches. I used to use roaches. Yeah, roaches for sure. Roaches for sure will help. I used to use superworms, but
really,
I would recommend not doing that because they can be a little aggressive and bite your animals and stuff. Yeah. So we want to avoid using those. But things like mealworms could work. Like you said, roaches. We were down at Gabe's place a little bit ago, and Gabe Schuler, and he's got some cool roaches in his Amazon tree boa enclosure.
Oh, that's cool. I thought about putting some in the monkey lizard cage, just like letting go of a few of them because they eat them also, obviously.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a great addition. I feel like.
Yeah, you should, dude.
I might just throw a group of like 10 of them in there and just kind of let them do their thing.
Yeah. They'll probably all get eaten anyway, but like
eventually I'm sure they will.
Yeah. Roaches are great. Obviously you want to stick to like your discoid roaches and stuff that like won't live in your house. Like you don't want to do like the German cockroaches or palmetto something like that. But they're a good cleanup crew. Speaking of roaches, this is a side topic. You know what we saw this weekend?
What?
We saw a real life dung beetle.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That's pretty dope.
It was rolling. Actually, it was rolling fur. The poop was right next to it, but it was rolling the fur around. But we were walking back on this one road. It was night, and Justin Smith goes, "We got a dung beetle over here." And I was like, "Yeah, right. Like,
we got a dung beetle.
We're not in Africa." And he was like,
"Right."
He didn't say anything else. And then I walk up, and it's a dung beetle. And I was like, "Dude, I did not take you seriously on this at all. Like I was not thinking that that's what you actually found here, but it was really cool."
I've been heavily in the background researching like praying mantis and like rhino beetles and stuff because I want to keep more bugs. I fucking love bugs. I've just never really kept them in any capacity. But I think it'd be freaking awesome to
Yeah,
keep some, like start out with the larvae, put it in the soil, watch it grow, kind of deal. Because they don't live long, obviously, but
I'd love
I
to have some
think
praying mantises, man.
mantis would be dope. I don't know. Did we go to the insect house at the St. Louis Zoo when you were here? We
Yeah,
did. We saw the big mantis enclosure they had, dude.
yeah,
So insane.
yeah.
I think it'd be cool.
Mantises are really cool. They're like the pistol shrimp of
Yeah.
they're mantis shrimp of the. Well, I guess that's why it's called a mantis shrimp.
There you go.
I never thought about that until right now. That was
Oh
crazy.
man.
You guys just saw a light bulb moment there for
Yeah,
me
we did in real time.
in real time.
Yeah, I think keeping bugs would be fun, man.
Yeah,
Off topic completely, but
yeah, but it'd be cool.
I just love living things, dude. I just love it all.
Yeah, except spiders. I don't like spiders very much.
I can't do spiders. I try to keep tarantulas, dude, and I just can't do it.
Yeah,
Not a fan.
you don't have enough piercings, I don't think, to keep tarantulas.
No, or enough tattoos.
No, all respect out there to any tarantula keepers who've got following the podcast. I apologize for my joke.
Oh, they're gorgeous. I love looking at them, but I just can't keep them. I'm so like just not a fan of spiders. I just don't. The one fear I have is just I don't do spiders, man.
Yeah, me too. We saw crazy big wolf spiders while we were down there, dude. Like
I
these
bet.
tarantulas. I've never seen wolf spiders that big. And Jake was over there like, "Oh, I find bigger spiders in my closet," and I'm like, "Well, dude, you need to clean out your closet. That's
who knows what Jake's keeping in that closet, though."
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess back to what we were talking about, the cleanup crews. But there's a ton of different options out there, and a lot of them you might have to collect yourself just because of different laws about selling bugs across state lines. There's a lot more laws than we have in the reptile world about that, and it makes sense because a bug infestation where they're not supposed to be is not great. I mean, that's how we got German cockroaches over here, and
right.
Everyone's just scared of a locust outbreak, so definitely want to make sure we don't do that. And so making sure that you've got everything contained, and if you are going to get something that's not available for sale, like get something that you can collect locally. And then just watch out for parasites, because bugs can carry parasites, but and your animals might eat them. But there's a ton of different options, especially millipedes. I feel like millipedes are growing in popularity along with the isopods because they're pretty similar.
I want to do some millipedes. I want to try to find some outside. I have such a fucking nerd, dude. I have another bin that I made, and I pulled clumps of grass out and kind of planted it in this tub, and I have it under a grow light in the gecko room. And that's what I have the snails in. And then I found a few really small millipedes that I just kind of threw in there to see what happens. And then some isopods and stuff. So I got a hodgepodge of a little piece of my backyard in this tub. I'm trying to see what happens.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
Yeah. Makes you feel like a kid. Dude, we found these crazy millipedes while we were down there. They're this long. Crazy big millipedes. They were so cool. But yeah, the things you want to stay away from are things that are, venomous. So centipedes, you definitely don't want to have in there. Anything that, could hurt your animal. Like I said, the super worms, anything that's going to infest the enclosure. So something like discoid roaches for you will be good in the monkey lizards because they'll kind of keep that population in check. But if you got a snake and then you're putting the discoid roaches in there, you might
they breed. There's a reason people say things breed like roaches, man, because they multiply like crazy.
So it might not be great in the snake enclosure, depending on the roach. I mean, you might have some that aren't going to breed as crazy, but just watching out for things like that. Okay, but the point of the cleanup crew, and the reason that they call them the cleanup crew, is for a couple of reasons. But we talked about the cycle with aquariums, and the same cycle goes on in a terrarium. So you've got your nitrate cycle, there's waste produced, whether it's from your reptile pooping or peeing, and then dead leaves falling, things like that creates waste and detritus in the ecosystem. And so there's three principal processes to maintain the ecosystem, and that's microbiological, fungal, and mechanical. And so the microbiological processes rely on aerobic bacteria, so that's bacteria that has oxygen, and that helps break down organic bioactive compounds producing nitrogen, which then the plants can consume as fertilizer. The mechanical processes are your cleanup crew. And so basically what they're doing is breaking these things down into a small enough spot where these aerobic bacteria can then consume them and then produce nitrate. And so they'll break down feces, shed skin, dead plant matter, and biodegradable natural pieces like leaf litter, wood, moss, things like that. And that'll feed your microbiological and fungal processes, which will then feed your plants. So having those there, breaks that down. And then they also aerate the soil as they're moving through the soil and turning it up and stuff like that. So there's a couple of different things that they do that are important. But yeah, so they're breaking it down and then making it consumable for plants. So, yeah, I think that's
another thing in terms of like the substrate of how you know your substrate's doing good is like if you get like mushroom growth or you get some other sort of like fungi growth. Some people like lose their minds about that. But I think if you're growing a mushroom in your enclosure, your soil has to be pretty on point to even even start that process at all, So it's not like I've seen some people like say, "Oh, I'm growing mushrooms, my substrate must not be doing good," which is crazy. It's actually like the complete opposite. Healthy substrate will and can grow many types of fungus. So keep that in mind too. Like I have a crazy looking mushroom growing in one of the Oridura cages, in like the very front. It's just like going sideways, and they go away. I mean, they grow and then they kind of die off and break down and go back into the soil, but it's definitely not something to be concerned about at all.
Yeah, I think it's a good sign. It's a sign
for sure.
that everything's functioning as it should be. Like I was saying, that the fungal piece to it is a part of its filtration within the substrate, and they help break down. That's what they do. They feed on decaying matter. They're detrivores, and so that means that they just feed on decaying matter and break it down. So they're super important to the natural world. Side note: if you're interested in mushrooms, there's a crazy documentary on Netflix, and I'll have to figure out the name of it and put it in the show notes. But it's really worth a watch. And it just talks about how like fungi basically in the wild will create networks between trees, and the trees use fungus to like communicate with one another.
And on that topic, if you want to research it like crazy, there's a gentleman named Paul Stamets.
That's the guy.
Who is like, he's the guy for like, he was actually, I just started listening to his recent episode on Joe Rogan, and they're doing so much cool shit with mushrooms, man. It's fucking incredible. Like, you can go down the rabbit hole on all these mushrooms and stuff. But yeah, Paul Stamets, he's written a book or two, I believe. He's got a website. If you're really if you're into mushrooms and fungus and stuff, he's definitely the guy to look up and consume all of his content because he's fantastic.
Yeah, and the documentary that I was saying just is basically his life and his findings and everything like that.
Yeah,
so it's all about him. It's awesome.
Yeah, he's like so knowledgeable on that whole thing. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So with that being said, fungus is good. It's a good thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so what I wanted to go into on this piece of it is the bio dude who we mentioned before, who I get my leaf litter and botanicals from, actually sells a product called BioShot. And so when you set up your enclosure, you can add this. When you set up your substrate, you add this into your substrate. It's basically like a shot of fungi and different I'm blanking on the word, fertilizer. Basically, it's like natural fertilizer and fungi that like seeds your enclosure with this bacteria and fungus to start the cycle. Like the fungus will come naturally with all the natural elements that you're adding in there, but this is like
Right.
for starter to get your plants going and everything like that. So it'll create this I can't remember the name of the main piece of fungus it is, but it's like underground, so it won't have mushrooms up above. But it's like an underground network, which is the same network that trees use to communicate, but it creates this underground network of fungi underneath that really start that fungal filtering process.
Yeah.
So it's a great product. I'll read the description here because it does a better job of explaining it. But it's basically an organic fertilizer and microbial supplement for bioactive vivariums, and it's formulated with mycorrhizal fungi and natural insect-based fertilizer to promote the efficient conversion of organic waste to nutrients easily absorbed by plant roots. It's got a perfect balance of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. 242 is that balance, which you want to do with your substrate too, but that's a little further advanced. If you do the mix that we talked about, you'll basically get there.
Yeah.
Make your plants grow fuller and healthier than ever. And it can thrive in bone dry or wet environments. So that's a little, I guess, unpaid plug sponsorship for that product. But I really do think it'll help super start your enclosure. If you keep fish at all, like, when you add this beneficial bacteria when you start up your tank, that allows you to cycle your aquarium faster. It's kind of like the same concept there. So
yeah,
but super awesome product.
I never used it actually, but I'd like to try it.
You should, dude. You should.
I didn't even know I didn't know it was a thing. To be honest
Yeah.
with you, I didn't know that's what they had something like that.
Yeah, I would try it on something larger because it'd be worth it on a smaller thing. But I would definitely try it on a large enclosure when you go to build one soon.
So I'll have to try that out.
Yeah, and just super start it. So, but yeah, that's that. I think there's a lot that we talked about. And I think this is the key to bioactivity. I think, maybe we save the plants and the lighting and stuff like that for another episode.
I agree. Yeah. Cause I don't want to rush this whole process. I kind of want to really dive deep. Like we just talked about dirt for an hour, I want to go deep on this stuff. So I love talking about it. And I think it's good for people to hear about, especially from people who are actively doing it, So, yeah, I mean, I'm down to save the rest of it for the next episode. I think it'd be a smart move that way. So we can really dive deep.
I think we should, and then we can talk about all the equipment and plants and stuff like that. But I do want to say something on plants, and then we'll talk more about it in the next one. But like we talked about all the elements of bioactivity in a substrate except for the plants, and the plants are a key too because once you've got all this waste broken down by the aerobic bacteria and the microorganisms, it has to go somewhere to go. It has to have somewhere to go.
Right.
And so, like, if you're not using plants, that's fine, but you have to change out your soil regularly to make sure it's not becoming nitrogenous, just full of nutrients that aren't being taken anywhere, because that's where you start to run into the bad bacteria. It's the same. It basically is the exact same thing, even if you've got bugs in there, as having just a regular substrate, like an aspen bedding or something that your animals put in and just causing a mess because there's nowhere for that to go. It's broken down, but it's still toxic because it's excess nutrients that aren't being consumed. It's like in an aquarium, if this were to happen, you get an algae spike, but because there's no algae and there's no living plants in a terrarium, what you'll get is a bacteria bloom. Get a stinky enclosure and just bad. So with that, I think maintenance is huge on that, and just changing out your soil. And even if you do have plants, like making sure you replace that carbon, and just doing kind of a not full substrate change outs, but we're taking out some dirt, replacing it, and sprucing it back up.
Yeah.
Every couple of months is good for sure.
especially on small enclosures. Like you can kind of just take a handful of dirt out and then put another handful in, and that's really all I do. I don't go crazy, you know. And yeah, I do that every few months. I'll just take a handful or so out, add a handful in, mix it up a little bit, and then you're good for
Yeah,
the next few months.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too, like when people think of bioactivity, they think, oh, I can just put all this dirt and these bugs in here, and then I don't have to clean poop. But like, if you can clean out the poop,
Yeah.
probably better. Like you can leave some in there for it to be processed, but if you've got something like a snake in a bioactive enclosure, like that poop is too large to
Mm-hmm.
be really effectively broken down, and it's happening too often.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you're pulling that out.
Yeah. Luckily for me, with all the geckos, I have so many isopods in each cage that I really don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But the monkey lizards specifically love the shit on leaves, like on the actual plants. So I do have to clean that. But um, yeah, for larger animals, you definitely like. I always see people say bioactive is like for the lazy keeper, right? Because they just think that, oh, I never have to clean this thing. I never have to do anything with it. It's bioactive. It does it all itself. And that's not necessarily the case. You do still have to do your routine maintenance on stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's similar. It's more similar. It's easier, but it's more similar to an aquarium,
Yeah.
where you're doing water changes and you're doing, routine maintenance just to keep the ecosystem in check, and that's what you're
Mhm.
doing here. It's definitely, I think easier, but it doesn't mean that there's no work involved with it, and
Right.
it's only easier when you set it up appropriately. Uh,
Exactly.
like
Just like an aquarium.
yeah, exactly. When you first set up, your substrate and you just first add in your isopods, like you're gonna have to clean because you don't have enough
Mhm.
isopods in there to really take care of it. And then once it matures and the isopods kind of breed, especially for the geckos, like what you were saying, like you won't have to do as much work. But
Right.
I feel like the work is really in the setup and then the overall maintenance, especially with plants and stuff. But we'll talk about that later.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
And then
man.
we'll also cover like I want to cover like cost
Yeah.
and like upfront cost versus long-term savings, that whole thing. So that's a big part of it too. And
Yeah.
I posted that question on our page, and I got a couple people brought that up, like the cost associated and stuff like that. So we'll definitely touch on that on the next one for sure.
Yeah.
Or maybe at like the end of the series, we'll kind of touch on the cost and all that stuff.
Did anyone respond to that with any like substrate stuff?
They didn't actually. So we got. Hold on, let me jump on here real quick.
Just think if there's anything related to like kind of what we talked about, we could just go ahead and talk about it now.
So we got. Let me see here. If I can get to it, maybe possibly. So we only got a few. Majority of them were like the cost associated, which I thought was kind of interesting. A lot of people want to know about the cost associated. And then Daniel Moore, which you know, right? That's your
Yep.
buddy.
Yep.
He brought up like how the hell people grow moss in their enclosures and keep it green, which I got no information for you, brother, because I can't do it either. But
Yeah, I think
it's
moss is one of those things that, and we'll talk about it with the plants, but
yeah,
it's a watering issue. It's keeping it moist but keeping it dry at the same time.
which is yeah, I can't do it. If you look at my page, you'll see that I use pothos pretty much exclusively, and there's a reason for that. It's because I can grow a house plant like crazy, but I
Mhm.
cannot grow plants in cages, dude. I don't know what it is. Pothos and Monstera are about my extent on plants and cages for some reason. But I want to try. I want to try some different stuff eventually. But
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, man. I can't grow plants for shit.
Yeah. Well, I want to try I want to try some ferns and some syngonium, and I want to do this spadefoot and barking tree frog enclosure that I was telling you about, and I want to do syngonium and some ferns in there and try my hand at those. But
I tried a rabbit's foot fern in the Polycris setup, and it fucking just died, dude. I don't know what the issue is. I really don't. Like, it wasn't in like no crazy direct heat. You know, it was kind of down tucked in a corner where it got good lighting, but it wasn't like hot. I mean, I have the Mist King on there, so the watering I don't think was the issue, but I don't know what the hell. The isopods loved it. They were living in it like crazy, but it just died. I don't know what the hell. So I just replaced it with a Monstera. It's just
it works. It's easy.
Yeah. Plus, now knowing that the Monstera is a native plant to the Polycris, I threw another one in there, so now there's one on either side. So
nice.
Yeah,
it's awesome. Yeah, and I think when we do the plant episode, we can really try to figure out, and I'd love to prep for that one and just try to figure out like what's going on, why you're having some issues, what really needs to be done in order to grow plants effectively in an enclosure.
Yeah, because I know it's not a fertilization issue, and I know it's not a moisture issue.
Yeah,
it's not a lighting issue because I have, all my cages are lit up like a hospital for the most part, so I don't know what it is. But I also I've tried a few different plants, but as of like recently, like really getting into this, I haven't really tried much. So I feel like I could probably do it now, but
yeah, especially with that humid room and, watering, with the RO water more frequently and stuff like.
Yeah, because it's crazy. Like the house plants I have in there are going nuts, but if I put them in a cage, nothing.
Yeah,
so I don't know. I don't know if it's a ventilation issue maybe or something, but
yeah,
the ventilation's fine for the soil, so I don't know. But we'll dive into all that on the next one for sure.
Yeah, we'll go deep. Well, awesome, man. I think we can go ahead and end this one here then.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add before we close out?
No, man, I think that was a good conversation.
Yeah.
We went pretty deep on the substrate and stuff, which like I said, I could sit here all night and talk about dirt, I fucking love it. So, but no, I think we covered a lot of useful information that you don't necessarily see out there if you like just Google a substrate, by whatever you want to word it, substrate layer, whatever. So
yeah,
that was a good one, man.
Yeah, I think also like just talking about from our experience, like what the substrate that we use and how it works, I think is good. So
yeah, because I have had a few people like hit me up, like if I post a story about me mixing my substrate, I have people hit me up asking what that mix is and how well it works. So
yeah,
listen to this episode, man.
Yeah,
it works wonders. I'm telling you, it's a great mix.
It does. Awesome, man. Well, with that, we'll close out episode number 10. Follow the Instagram Beyond the Terrarium. If you're not already, definitely go ahead and follow that and give us some love over there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow Brenden and I on Instagram. Brendan's is BM Exotics and mine is Jack Oliver Reptiles. So definitely check us out on there. We're posting all the time.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate all that listen and make it to the end of these episodes. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next week with an awesome guest that we are super stoked on. So
yeah, man, it's going to be a fun one next week.
Yeah,
I'm stoked for it.
I'm so excited for that episode. So
yeah,
it'll be awesome. And then after that, we'll be back with episode number 2 on the Naturalistic series. So
yep, absolutely.
See you guys next week. Thank you.